By popular request, two people, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the template and start working through Genesis with it and start looking at the repetition. And I've been working too hard trying to explain things, thinking that I don't even know how to proceed. I'm not getting through. So I've been kind of stuck trying to figure out things. And then when people do communicate with me, I end up getting off track sometimes, talking about things that aren't even about my channel. I need to stay on track. So now I'm going to approach this video a little bit differently mentally than I have in the past. Van Brewer and Maybe are two people that I recognize, understand the templates and the process. And they're ready to start having it cracked open. And since I recognize that those two are ready to go, I'm going to make this video oriented for what I think their perception is. So I'm going to jump ahead on things and stop being so detailed about explanations. They got it. We're ready to move on, and I'm ready to move on. So let's quickly review where we are right now. The 7-day creation, what we have right now, and all of these are not steps. The ones that are going to be critical are number 3, cause and effect. Number 4, everything cycles. And 7 right there, where we are living an unjudged life. Those are the big 3 right there. But we emerge from the cosmos. We are from a higher being. We do have a higher self. Everything functions with cause and effect. Everything cycles. We emerge with certain base qualities. We have become self-aware at this point, and 7-3, pure, unjudged life. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and transfer these over to a different document, though, something that I can just keep working with and adjusting with. And I will also remind everybody that what I'm doing right here, I'm finding patterns of something that they've done. They've got something nested in here, and I'm trying to learn what it is. So a lot of what I say is not going to probably be accurate in the end. There are things that I'm going to keep learning, and as people get involved with it and see what's going on, that there'll be other minds with other ideas that are adding things in. This is going to be flexible. We're trying to extract what secrets that they put in here, and we have to be flexible with our answers. Okay, what I've done here now is just transfer my work over to a Word document so that I can make it flexible. And if you look at it here, you'll see what I've done is I've highlighted the 3, 4, and 7 there, the steps in red. And the reason I've done that is because I know that these are going to continue to come up in the stories. Even though it's part of creation, and as you get into the monomyths, they're not part of creation. Remember, the stories are traveling word of mouth. They're not collected like this. So as somebody hears a story downstream, they need to know that there's going to be cause, effect, and cycles in there, and that 7, this pure place to go to, is going to be there. So these are going to emerge. So I've got those highlighted. We'll see those as we move along. All right, let's get into the second creation story now and get that analyzed real quickly. Okay, as I move into this, I'll tell you that I don't find any additional steps in this. What I find is that there are 2 creation stories. And I believe that the first creation story, the 7-day creation story, was added later because it just sounds different and it has additional details that allow an entire story network to emerge. This creation story really kind of starts off like a Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, as if it's going to be just one story that was a standalone. Genesis, to me, probably was a story by itself at one time that was modified later to become the beginning of the religion. And that's what I'm seeing right here, is that it doesn't have additional stuff in it. It has more archaic stuff, though. You know, a little further emphasis to what I'm talking about. If you go to the calling of Noah, and you'll see that there's actually 2 callings and 2 different instructions for what to bring on the boat. And that because there's 2 callings, the second one is the one that has the additional, the 7 pairs of animals in it that isn't in the other one, that lines up with the first creation story as far as verbiage. So it looks to me like both of those were added in later. One of them right at the beginning of the creation myth, and one of them right at the beginning of the very first monomyth. And I don't think I'm going to list anything out of here additional on the list that I've made so far that has the 7 days on there and the 7 steps, because nothing new emerges from here. And that day 7, what I do want to emphasize is there is that point where They were naked, not ashamed, in the Garden of Eden. That is a point where we are conscious, self-aware. That is our consciousness. The man is, the wife is our inner being. So we're happy kids. We know how to live life and have fun and go goof around. We're naked and not ashamed. We are not covered with anything. We are in a good psychological place in life at the beginning of our life. Now, I did just say there were no additional steps in here. There is additional information in here, though. When the story was a standalone, the 5 rivers, the river from Eden, all of that, those are containing things that have to do with the story or the mental hierarchy. There are parts in here that are still meaningful, but we've already got them covered. So I'm just not going to muddle things up by getting that detailed with it. Let's go right to the next step then. This is where we lose day 7. We start at first sin. This is when we consider first sin this way. We have to look at our life experiences to determine first sin. Look back on your childhood when you were happy, carefree, everything was okay, and at the point that stopped. An abuse, something, somehow, a learning, an experience, something, somehow, that went away. That's first sin right there. But then what we do is we live lives attaching to the physical. We see something happen and we don't understand that what we're watching happen is not just random occurrences out there, that everything that is happening is a result of cause and effect. We think it's just happening right there. So we judge it based on what we see, not understanding that there's something actually behind that action. There's something actually driving it, and we don't want to become a part of it. But that's exactly what we do. We don't know that to begin with. When we're getting ready to turn inward, we want to extract from all of that. But the way to extrapolate what first sin is for each of us is to look back on your own personal life and say, when did it go bad? And we might not even remember. There might be so much stuff that's buried in there, but that's basically it. First sin means I've gone from now that day 7, happy-go-lucky in the Garden of Eden, naked, unashamed, to now I'm no longer happy-go-lucky in the Garden of Eden, and I am ashamed, and I'm going to cover myself with things. That's first sin right there. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is change that first creation story there. I'm going to keep this ongoing here. We'll start making modifications to it. This is the human life cycle that we're beginning on right here. So I'm going to rename that to human life cycle, and we're going to start running a list. I put that down as number 8. I'll work on we'll work on that later. Number 8, loss of mental peace is what we've just experienced. Then we've gone from day 7 where we were naked, unashamed in the garden to the next day where we are now ashamed and we're no longer in the garden. We're not going to be there anymore. We're going to be kicked out. That signifies our loss of mental peace. The judgment of our physical experiences begins, and we're going to live our lives attaching to the physical. So the story goes on in fashion, and let's see what it continues to hold inside of here. The woman and the man are each of us individually. God is our higher being. Our higher being is losing touch with our conscious and our subconscious and saying, yeah, you are off on your own now. You're getting ready to go leave and live your own life. This joy and this peace that you had living with me is now gone because you are living the physical life. And sin begins. I'm going to just jump down there because this is an important one. This is cyclical pain. To the woman, he said, I will greatly increase your pangs in childbearing. Remember, read this conceptually. Play it out in the psyche. I read this as, to the psyche, he said, I will greatly increase the pain you have when something emerges from you. In pain, everything that acts out from you that has come from the physical experiences you've had are going to be painful. Yet your desire shall be for your consciousness, and he shall rule over you. And right there, the conscious shall rule over you. What we're understanding in this material is that the conscious is the one that makes the decisions that creates the issues. They write this story like it's the woman's issue, but then right here they're telling us, once we interpret it, that it is the perception of the consciousness. It's the conscious having the experience that decides, ooh, I don't like that, or I do like that, or something, that then stores it away, that creates the inner being, that creates the Eve, that creates the offspring that continue to act out, and whenever they do, it's painful. What we have, do you see what I just did there? That's how I read these, something similar to that. It's harder to speak it than it is to play it out in your mind. So what we have right there is the next step. That is, what we have is cyclical pain. This is important. Okay, let's move on. And to the man he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and you have eaten of the tree about which I have commanded you, shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. I read this as because my conscience is now in line with experiencing what I have stored inside of me. The ground in front of me, my life, is cursed. In toil you shall eat of it all the days. This is my life experiences that I have stored away, that I'm going to be consuming. They're going to be emerging from my gardens, whether they are, even if they're thistles. Life, thorns, and thistles, it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. This is me eating my life experiences that I have not resolved. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground. This is living. You are going to live from that physical place. You shall eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you are taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. Some of this is superfluous to carry the religion and to sound very wonderful. It's a complex version of a story that on a template. The man named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all things. And the Lord God made garments of skins for the man, for his wife, and clothed them. So here we are starting off in life. We're clothing. It sounds fun if you're telling a story and people believe it to be true. But if you're trying to play it out in the psyche, this is us putting covering on ourselves. We're beginning to hide. We're beginning to put shame away. We're beginning to put judgments away and not let them out. Our prejudices and things like that. We begin to become dual and hold things inside of us. I'm going to add that one in. It is going to be common. We cover ourselves. And again, covering, this is all mental. So when we're covering ourselves, what we're doing is we're beginning to trap things away that we are not okay with. We don't want to talk about them. We won't talk about them. We don't feel good about them. They emerge in anger, shame, or something like that. We're beginning to put things away that we are now not okay with. That is what we are covering ourselves with. We didn't act out like that when we were kids. When we get older, we begin to put up walls and barriers. And if somebody gets too close to something, we scream and yell, which shows what's right there. Okay, just to finish off this part, you shall eat of the plants of the dust, you shall return. You're going to be living off of physical experiences. Yeah, you're going to be living from what you see on planet Earth as opposed to what you know from a higher place. The man named his wife Eve, creating the story. And what I mean is the hierarchy there. You can see the man named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living. As we get into the story, everything that emerges, all the people that are born, all the people that show up, all of that are going to play out as component parts of a story that is meant to play out in the psyche. So Eve is going to be our initial inner being that is going to give birth to all of our life experiences. Those are going to be what are the living. Made garments of the skin, covered them. Yep, there we have it. See, he's become like one of us, kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You are no longer happy. He drove a man at the east of the Garden of Eden. He placed the cherubim and his flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Why would you do that? Why would God say you can't come back here now that you've done that? Why would you not have the tree of life? The thing is, the tree of life would have been something that was accessible to us as children. It's being raised in a way that you never did connect. You could be raised in environments where people knew this and you never did partake of that. And so you didn't judge life in the way that most people do. However, once you have and you've left, we can't get back to this point. We have to find a new happy place to be. We've judged, we must unjudge. We can't, this was a place of blissful ignorance. And by that I mean that we had not yet been exposed to the world or what happens in the world. There's a point when you see the world and you see pain and you see hurt and you see things that you're going to judge, then that is That's exactly what happens here. And that's what that alludes to. Once we've seen that, we cannot unsee that. So we can't get back to the Garden of Eden. We can't get back to that point where we were not aware of it. We have to get to a point where we are aware of it, but we find a way to live with it without it hurting us and without us adding to it. We can't get back there. We have to go to a new place. Okay, Cain murders Abel. First, let's bring in the idea of what this is. If Adam is our consciousness and Eve is our inner being, Cain and Abel are going to be offspring of those two, the potential of who we become. What this is letting us know, and what it's doing and how it's holding the story, is that we are each of the people along the way, or all of the people in the story are aspects of who and what we are. So Cain and Abel emerging from Eve through the union of Adam and Eve, what that amounts to is that as we're growing and we're developing, we are developing two options, two directions to go here, Cain and Abel. As the story unfolds, we're going to see a good one and a bad one. But what I want to just make sure to emphasize at this point is that Cain and Abel are aspects of who and what we are going to become. They're slicing up a life and taking aspects of who and what we are, the angels on the shoulders, and giving them all names and who all the people are. And we'll see that as we go along here. So keep that in mind as we're reading through this. That is how I approach this exclusively now. So Cain and Abel are up again, two aspects of who and what we are. We become divided as well as tied to the physical. This is the development of our earliest self. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. So this is us now growing up and developing parts of our personality. We are becoming fractured in a way, but we're developing parts of who and what we are. Next she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel for his part brought of the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. We are becoming divided. Cain and Abel are both parts of us. What they're using in the story and what they're going to continue to use with the offering and the having an altar, burning offerings, they're doing that in their culture, obviously, because that's how they live and believe. But on the template, what that's representing is a higher and living from a higher place, that higher being, or living from the land. The tiller of the land, Cain, is the one who is going to take over. That is the part of us that is stuck living on based on effect. We're looking at the physical world, and we are growing and developing, connecting to the physical world. What I want to say here is that there's something that seems to be emerging from the material that is very specific, that has to do with an altar, creating an altar. This is a place where you connect with God. In stories, if you were to look at Jason and the Argonauts, for example, one of the first steps is that he's taken up to Mount Olympus to talk to Zeus. That's a supernatural aid step right there. If you were to look at Moses in Exodus, you would see that he is guided to Mount Horeb and talks to God through the burning bush. There is the burning bush right there would be a Hebrew one where they could have just as easily have had a burnt offering right there. This represents communicating with the higher being, the conscious and the higher being. We do that all the time anyway. We may not know how to control it. There's something very specific we can do. Anyway, does that make sense? So the altar is going to be something that represents a way to communicate to a higher self. And it looks to me like you're burning something from the physical, an animal, and it goes up in smoke, so it's no longer physical. Yeah, I don't know. Seems kind of bizarre, but that's what they're doing. But in all the material, there has to be this step in there. You have to somehow communicate with the higher being in order to make progress. Where else, we don't see an altar here, but that is what I'm suggesting when we're looking at this, why Cain and Abel sounds the way it does. Okay, let's see what more fun stuff we can find in here. We'll continue on. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen?" So, yeah, again, Cain was not angry. Cain was not happy that his offering was not okay. But this represents ourselves not being okay, that we are coming back with life experiences that are no longer good. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen?" Yeah, we're not happy anymore. If you do well, will you not be accepted? Sounds like if you act okay. And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. This is inside of us. It's not sin. It is something that we are holding on to. All of these are analogous terms, but we must master it. If we don't, it'll master us. Cain said to his brother Abel, this is our early self again, "Let us go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength, but you will be a fugitive and a wanderer of the earth." Okay, this is a fun one. So he took him out to the field. This is not a single event. This is us. Look back on your own life. This is yourself when you were not attached to the ground to the time that you do become attached. You see, there's two options here: the giving of the animals, the giving up of the things, or the working of the ground. And what we want to do in the spiritual world actually is give things up. We don't want to work the ground. Working the ground represents living life unaware, attached to the physical world without realizing that we are just growing and learning, unaware that we're seeing the end result of something in action. We need to identify what an animal is. An animal is something that we are producing from our physical experience. That's what it represents. As I am acting, as I am talking, as I am conducting myself in some manner based on something that is in my environment or that is emergent from me, that is considered what is an animal. That is what is coming from my physical experience. And I want to give those up. I want to sacrifice those. The thing to do is to get rid of that stuff. The analogs are going to work that way, but the animal can be a good animal or a bad animal. It really means what you are doing, your work, your manifestation, what emerges from your garden. In the same fashion, birds of the air are your thoughts. This is from the higher being, and you are in charge of them. We eventually are the ones who control what animals we hold and what birds we hold. The ones that are 7 pairs, those are pure ones. Those are the ones that are sent on the ark. Those are ones that are added into the story. And the blood emerging from the ground, what does that sound like? The blood emerging from the ground. This is us living life and having experiences and being good people, and then triggering out and having stuff that come out of you, and you can explain it once, or maybe once. And people go, "Wow, where does that come from?" We have these issues that emerge, that come out, that you sometimes have to go, I'm sorry. I have regrets. My life is in shambles. This is the brother's blood calling out from the ground when you have regrets afterwards. This is the good part of you going, "Yeah, you buried me down here in the soil. You took over." But it is the bad qualities. Okay, we're going to have a step out of this, but let's go ahead and finish up and see if we have anything else. And remember, it ended up with, "You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." Yeah, that means you're going to go live the physical life for a while. You're going to live attached It's going to be a while before we go, oh my gosh, what do I do to change my life? Until then, we're a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who came upon him would kill him. There's something that I want to say about that, but it would get too complicated. Let's just go on. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. We're east of Eden. East is the bad direction to go. We can see that because east is always, that's where you go when things are bad. Okay, right here I added in another step. We become divided. There's probably more to it than that. We become divided and it goes south for us, doesn't it? We attach to physical. We become products of the physical. That's a better way to put it. We're clinging on to life experiences, just not knowing any differently. Whatever else I get out of there, it's difficult to... I don't know that there's any steps in there. We'll keep an eye on it. It's a wonderful story. It's telling us about, the blood crying out from the ground, letting you know you're going to have regrets. There's feelings. It's very rich. It's actually explanatory in a very deep, old way. I've taken a break from the video. Had some computer problems. I'm going back and listening to it, editing some things in. And here's something I didn't catch the first time through. I want to look at it where it repeats something up here. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. See, the fugitive and wanderer on the earth appears 2 times at this point. I want to add that to the list up there. All right, we're on number 11, and there we have it. We become divided. We attach to our judged physical experiences. That's when we are naming things, when we're observing what they are and deciding the quality of them and then storing them that way. But that is also being used in the material is become a fugitive and a wanderer of the earth. Remember, if we can picture this through, the earth is my earth, your earth. Whoever is going on this path, it is your life experience. You are a fugitive wandering around life as not aware that is what is going on. That is what we do. We start off not aware. We are a fugitive and a wanderer on our own life experience. There we have it. I want to put that in there just because terms like that are going to show up through the material, the fugitive and wanderer, and I just want to be able to tie that to this point when we start going through and looking for our patterns. So the next chapter is the beginnings of civilization. And I've got this listed here as going forth and multiplying, experiencing and connecting to our initial physical life. We become complex in this connection over time. Let me talk about that just a little bit because I think it sounds kind of goofy. Going forth and multiplying that plays out in the psyche. So this is not about our physical life, going out and having family and things like that. It sounds that way. But it's playing out on a template for the human life. So what this is we've started off in life. In the beginning, we're not very far along. We've begun the judgments. We're divided. We are now attached to the earth. What is happening now is time is going to continue on. We're going to attach more. We're going to grow up. We're going to finish school. We're going to get jobs. We're going to go have relationships. That the unchecked, that what we have become will continue to increase and branch out. In a nutshell, our simple hurt selves become incredibly complicated hurt selves. I'm going to jump ahead and call this one, we further increase what we are becoming, but let's just kind of go through it real quick too. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, and he built a city and named it Enoch after his son Enoch. Watch things like that where you see 3 names together. That's a tag to something. I'm going to leave it for now because we need to move along. There's a lot of detail in here, but I think we've got the big picture. The big step is time goes on. Now there's other things in here. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad the father of Mehujael, and Mehujael. In fact, let me not even read through the whole thing. It just takes up time. We can see that there are more details in here. And let's see, at that time people began to invoke the name of the Lord. That is where we're starting to call out for help. What the hell? Okay. That would be then what? Is there any other step in there? No. Let me talk about this for a second then. So what we have is big steps along the way, but there are finer details within each step. This is each one of these blocks. The first sin, Cain and Abel, all of them are next steps along the way on the template. And within each step, though, they can continue to add things into it. And they've got other things going on here that have to do with network, and the names themselves that they're using probably define as something there, honor, glory, evil, something somehow, that is even a deeper layer that seems to be there. I'm not even going there. In the big block right here, we have become very complicated versions of what we once were. It's harder to extract from. Let's move on from there. Okay, what we have, Adam's descendants to Noah, and I am not going to read through this. It is a lineage. We need to talk about it because lineages show up in the material, and they always show up at a certain place in the template, so it exists there for a specific reason on the template. And to me, it is doing multiple things. Number one, if you go through the numbers and the names here in the Jewish material, it's almost like there's some sort of a pattern going on. There's some sort of a sequence. I don't have that interpreted. It's a deeper layer. But in the overall picture, if you look at what is happening outside of the minutia of the little detail, when you look at the big picture, what you see is a different step, and that is that time goes on. Let me go ahead and bring this up again. This, if you remember from the previous video, again, link below to the setup to this, that the very top row right up there, what I've got from the left over to the right where it is blue, right there where it's blue is where we just hit today, right now. This is the lineage. Time goes on. Now, if you look at the next line down below it, this is the monomyth we're about ready to start on. And at the end of it, in the blue right there, that is a lineage. Time goes on. Then on the third line, what we have is a very short version, incredibly short. It'll be a fun one to do. We'll get to it. And that is the Tower of Babel. And look what follows it. A lineage. Time goes on. Time follows all of these. Now, in the top one, there is something at the end. There is a transition there. That is a unique place that we're going to find right here, because this is where it transitions from the first template and everything went to hell to now it's time to destroy it. So there's a transition that happens right there. So what do we have here then? Time goes by. Okay, let's get to the next part. Okay, the wickedness of humankind. This is us again. This is all of our qualities. We are the ones becoming more complex. It is our world. It is my life experience that is the earth that is getting raucous. When people begin to multiply on the face of the ground and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. So here we have some sort of sons of God taking wives from what? Fair daughters, our fair daughters. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh." Yep, we're going to go live the physical life. For their days shall be 120 years. We need to put that number down. That's going to mean something here. The Nephilim, those represent bad qualities, were on the earth in those days and also afterward, screaming and yelling and not trusting anymore. When the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them, those were These were the heroes that were of old, the warriors of renown. Remember, these are all analogs. We don't want to call them heroes or bad or anything. They are the qualities of life experiences that have created conditions in our lives that we are no longer happy, trustworthy, loving. We're fearful. We have a lot of issues. These are the Nephilim, and we have become corrupt. This is where the switch happens. God, the inner being, chooses to change. The Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out from the earth the human beings I have created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. Okay, so this is us. This is our life. And God saying, I've had it, is the calling. That is the moment when you go, I got to deal with this. I'm done with it. I'm not taking it anymore. I'm not putting up with it, whatever it might be. It might be an entire life. It might be a situation that has just got you completely racked. But at the moment when you say, I'm stepping outside, I know I don't like it. It's fearful and all that, but I'm stepping outside of it and I'm going to deal with it anyway. That right there is you. That's the point right there. Okay, what do we have on our chart here then? Do you see we've completed now from creation all the way to this point to where it's time for us to turn inward. This entire template is sequenced in that way. Template sequence, series of events, pathway. Yeah. Okay, so what do we get out of that last one? We had our time goes by, and now we have like complete annihilation. We've had it, 14 there. I'm not quite sure what to call that. Again, these are going to be flexible. As we move along, we'll come up with better terms as we figure out what they're doing. So, gosh, what do you say here? It's just, we have become so corrupt. Or a situation has become so corrupt. Let me think. We decide. No, I'll just say enough. We decide we've had enough. I'll put that in there. We have become so internally. That's not a good term, is it? Confused, out of control. What is the term we're looking for there? We become so internally frazzled. How's that? We decide we've had enough. Okay. We'll just see how that goes for now. Okay. Now what we have is a monomyth calling. And there's two of them. I'm going to just go ahead and jump through what the big steps are here again. There's details in the sizes of the ark and things like that. We're not even going to get into all of that stuff. Let's just get the big pieces right here. Okay, I've got Noah here, and I've called it monomyth before. I'm going to call it the self-healing sequence, which what it is. These are the descendants of Noah. First of all, I'm going to say right here, we've got a calling. Okay, so I've got it on the list down here, calling. I've started over a template, a different template, self-healing sequence. I don't know that I need to. All right, I'm going to keep advancing my thinking on this too. I say templates plural. That's how I discovered it. There was one that was very evident and one that was very kind of obscure. And it took me a while to analyze what they were. And if you look at it, you see a human life template from creation all the way up to where the world is raucous. Everybody lives that life. Or somewhere along the way, they might not get that bad. They might not become that person. This is for the people who need to turn inward and heal. But that first section right there is really the setup as to how we came about, how we got to here, plus the cycles and the cause and effect and the things that we need to know how to know in order to interact with the material and to dissect these same concepts out of the material. Okay, so there's a template right there that at some point it looked to me like two separate templates. However, there's a point where I, myself, personally move far enough along where it begins to look like one single template. But that depends on the user. because I'm continually going on the path and turning inward and healing and trying to work on things and trying to observe my issues and whatnot, then I've really come from in life from the being born all the way up to where the world is raucous to now going and cycling. At some point, the entire thing becomes a single template called my life cycles, kind of a path along the way is what it looks like for me. And of course, this just takes looking at it again and again and again. And you realize that there are like some transition points along the way. In the Garden of Eden, the taking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or the tree of life, that was a transition point. What did we do? We went the bad way. Cain and Abel, there's a transition again. What happens? We take the way where we're attached to the ground. But what if you didn't? What if you were from an environment where those didn't happen, where somebody taught you, we don't believe that way. There could be aware people who teach you that we don't attach to the world, that there's cause and effect, that what you're seeing out there is not. Well, it just seems to me like you can have mentally enlightened enough parents to realize that it is better to raise children teaching them how to think instead of telling them what to think. Okay, so right there we see a place where you might not take the path. Then when we get down to where the world is raucous, right there people may never leave that. They may stay right there completely. The calling happens, but there's actually, it's almost to me like a sequence of OR gates and logics. Like you can come down to here and then you can do this or this. And this, go down here, you can do this or this. So I'm seeing that kind of a sequence in there, and that might be why it pops up into my head that way. It looks sometimes like symbols. What I want to talk about here, though, is two things. Number one is called, and number two, the quality of the template at this point. What I want to suggest is that if we were to go back to Babylonian works, to the Enum Elish, and I've done videos on that, the template is emerging. The called is a little bit different. They're creating somebody with, 4 eyes and 4 ears, and there's something different going on in the way that is written. But that is Marduk, the called person. That is going to be us when we go back in and work on healing ourselves. Cyclical pain is not held in a way that looks like cyclical pain. What they've done is on one tablet created a story that is of pain, of winds and destruction and things like that happening, and then it subsides, and then on the next tablet it repeats again, where sometimes people have even asked, did you get mixed up and read that part? That sounded like the same thing. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're repeating the issue instead of showing a repeating cycle. So it's still in place, but you can see that it sounds a bit different. It looks to me like what they were doing is advancing the technique as time went by. This is thousands of years, hundreds to begin with. Okay, so this whole template, the template we know of that is the I am called, deny the call. This is the one that starts with Joseph Campbell's, but we're going to modify it, which means I'm a rare person, but I'm not going to want to do it. I get supernatural aid, which means I'm going to have to learn what to do in order to resolve my issues. And then the crossing of the threshold, which means I have to turn inward to my mind. These story elements are going to show up somehow as a component part of the story as it moves along, crossing a barrier, a river, something like that, as far as crossing the threshold. We will see component parts of the story that relate to that. However, here in Genesis, it's not that, it's like it's not that advanced. When we get to Exodus, we're going to see that come in. We're going to see Moses being singled out at birth, being called, him saying, no, I don't want to do it. We're going to see him go to Mount Horeb to talk to God at the burning bush, the supernatural aid. We're going to see the cyclical pain happening in the background with the plagues coming. Pharaoh saying, go, get out of here, and then coming after you, showing the difficulty of leaving the past. Those story elements are going to pop right up when we get to Exodus. Here in Genesis, they're not there yet. It's too primitive. And I'll just say, as we understand it more, I think that'll become clear. Okay, the calling. This is how we're going to isolate and why there's so few of us doing it. But this is what, as best as I can figure, what is going on and why there are, and who is the calling. And what I want to define is the term righteous and righteousness, because it permeates Abrahamic material, righteous and righteousness. And we tend to think that That means I am a believer, and we call it good at that. But they're analogous terms that mean something different. And in righteousness, in this case, what it's going to come down to, and you're just going to have to think through this on your own, there are certain people who are not followers. We don't join groups. We don't listen to people because they have degrees, because they have something here or there. We sit and listen and go, I don't think that makes sense. We're not just taking stuff in. We're actually processing it as it's coming in and comparing it to other things that we know and classifying it, evaluating it. We're not just falling into it. What I'm going to suggest is that righteousness is, if you know what the scientific method is, that's what the search for righteousness is. It's the bottom line truth, but it's dismissing things that you're just told to believe in. Righteousness does not mean I'm going to believe that because it's something that was told to me that I like the sounds of, and I believe in it, and I have glory toward it and all of that. That might sound good and it might make somebody feel good, but that's not reality. That's belief in a supernatural. The person that seeks righteousness is going to see that and go, no, there's something else there. I'm going for that. Righteousness is bottom line truth and reality. Something that when you get done, you can interact with it. It can't be argued with. People can actually deny it and say, oh, that's not there. It's not in the material. But it is there if you can extract it. And it is something that you can interact with. And it is something that is mental and is based in what we would know in science, being held inside of mythical or supernatural shells. Okay, so that's it. I think as far as the template, what I'm going to do is add in some pieces that I don't find here in Genesis. Again, Genesis, I see that there was a creation in the beginning. Everything went bad. Then there was a destruction. Some elements had to go from creation over here and then had to start over again. It almost looks to me like it would have been easier to create the religion if they had not had the flood story to begin with, if it went right into God's chosen and just went right from there. But they were stuck using it, so here they are. And the more you analyze it, the more you go, wow, this is kind of a kludge. It's like pieces put together. But they're put together on the outer shell. They still don't sound right, do they? Read them through. There are two creation stories. There are two different ways Noah is told what to bring on the boat. There are variations in here that can be observed. Okay, let's cover where we are with these additions. Self-healing sequence. We've got our calling. That's what I said was righteous. You have more of a Jewish term here. Righteousness is, I say explicit truth. That's explicit truth once you are the called person and you find the path. It's experiential at that point. It's implicit truth, I would say, for people who get that it works that way but haven't done anything. Anyway, yeah, that's all we want. We don't want supernatural answers. We want something that actually works. I don't feel good. Don't tell me I have to wait till I die. And that if I just do that I'll feel better now. That doesn't work for us. Okay, we reject the call. That kind of represents the struggles to begin. Supernatural aid is learning what to do. We're going to prepare for the journey. That's left out of Campbell's work there. There's a point where we see it here where there's going to be a preparation for the journey where Noah is being told to pack the animals and all the things that are necessary, how to build the ark, to bring his family, all of that. And Jason and the Argonauts, we're going to see them building the boat and building to a certain specs and bringing along 40 Argonauts. We would see in Jesus's time, it's going to be different. They're going on foot, but he's going to prepare to go by bringing along 12 selected disciples. So those are component parts that we'll get into. Then we cross the threshold that's turning inward. We've got to struggle to leave the past as we're doing that. Somewhere we can shift those around. We're going to defeat evil. We're going to render it inert. We're going to see this in story. This is where hell comes into play. Jewish Sheol, as we get into that. These are going to be the evil qualities that have been put away and just left there, rendered incapable of hurting us. And of course, that very specifically means the memory. What is the evil? It's the event. It's the thing I'm holding. It's the thing that I hate. Once I have made it so that I don't hate it anymore, it's trapped away. It is inert. It's still there, but it is no longer able to hurt me. In other words, that means it is still a memory. However, it is no longer something that is hurtful. It no longer controls me. We're going to return healed. We're going to feel better when we come back. After a short time of that, the next issues begin to arise, and then time goes by. And then it'll start over with a calling again. Okay, before a review, I made a few claims there about some steps that we can see here. I've got this highlighted. This is right here near the end of, let me zoom back a little bit. This is near the end of the flood story. And the flood is over with, and here is what is happening at the end. This is a part that I want to show. The sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. So Ham represents that part of us that is supposed to take over to get us to the happy place, mentally. That is who is supposed to be the next person taking over. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Remember, these are parts of our personality. So our sons are offspring of us. And we've got possibilities here, only this time instead of just having 2 possibilities, Cain and Abel, we've got 3 possibilities. And re-emphasis on how to use these people. Remember, these are us at different times in our life. They're iterations of who and what we are. They're the potential to be good, the potential to be bad, what happens instead, where you're supposed to go, where you end up in along the way. And that at certain points in time, I'm one person, then I change, I become another person. And at each time along the way, I have a wife that is a part of who and what I am, and I have offspring as to who and what I am, that these are just part of the story that's holding concepts within us. So be careful we don't get caught up in the fine detail. Make sure to mentally be able to see the bigger picture all the time. There's a larger scope happening in the background. And you know what? If I think that through, there are so many details. It seems to me like in the background is where all the detail is. I should say there's a smaller scope in the background. We get caught up in the details and don't see that. We fail to see the simplicity of this pattern because we get caught up in the details. Anyway, Ham was supposed to be the father of Canaan, leading to the good place. The 3 were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was peopled. We know that that's not true. It's just holding it in a story form. Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. So Noah was a man who was attached to the earth. He planted a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. The tent is our place of dwelling, that is inside of us. Laying drunk inside of ourselves. The vineyard represents a land, a world, a place, a building. There's different ways of using the idea or holding the idea that we have a place we reside or that we live from. And in this case, vineyard is going to show up quite a bit. It'll show up in a lot of Jesus material as well, the vineyard. The vineyard represents our land. We just destroyed the earth. We have now planted a vineyard, which means it's kind of a new place. The vineyard represents the earth, only on the new place. You know, I don't know if I'm very clear on that. In the material, there's a way of holding the idea of who and what we are. My basic thought process, my patterns, my belief system, my structure, my fears, all of that, who and what I am. And I could call that my land. And I want that land, but I don't have it because I've given it over to life experiences that are acting out, and I don't know that. But they might not always use land in this. They've used the world. They might use a building, a structure, a city, something somehow that represents the same location. In this case, vineyard is the same thing. So there's a lot of analogous terms that represent where I live, where I reside, and that is within the perceptions of my own life experiences and how I live through them. Planted a vineyard, which means that we have now created a place where we also get some wine and we came drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. So we actually feel good. This is not a bad thing. It sounds bad, doesn't it? We're drunk in the tent. Remembering that when we were in the Garden of Eden, the best place was when we were naked and uncovered. So this is representing that place where he is uncovered, he's okay, he's healed. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. So this is the part of us that's supposed to take over, that's looking at our new self saying, yeah, I've got other issues. I still have more stuff. And so Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away. They did not want to see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. He let him said, "Cursed be Canaan, lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers." So this means you're not going to be taking over. You're not going to find your happiness. He also said, "Blessed be by the Lord." That probably supposed to be the Lord, my God. Be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth. And okay, and then he died at the end. So that ends it right there. And then what do we have? We have nations descended from Noah. So we have a lineage. Let's stop for a second and talk about what happened here, though. We have to look at what happened conceptually with Noah and the tent and the land. The flood represents that we have now gone back and resolved an issue that we needed to resolve. It was just hounding us. You finally, you're lifted from it. It feels wonderful. Imagine even small instances where there was conflict somehow, somewhere that needed to be resolved, and you got it resolved, and just how good it feels to be like, oh my gosh, that feels good to have it lifted. This is where the flood is now over with, and we have planted a new vineyard. We have a new place to live now. That old place of fear and hurt has now been replaced with one of, oh my gosh, does that feel good? So now we've gone from the raucous world to a vineyard where we plant grapes and create wine, and that represents a good feeling. We're going to see wine used a lot as that very thing, a way to adjust feelings. They might write it in such a way that it sounds bad or good. Jesus turned water into wine at the wedding. That was a good thing. What we have to dismiss from how we hold on to the analogs. Wine means a new feeling, a new experience. So what he's having is a good experience. He's naked. He's uncovered now. Whatever this was that we were fettered with, we are now unfettered from it. We are naked, unashamed, drunk, feeling good inside of our tent. That was a good place to be. Then what happens, though, is that the aspects of who and what we are, we're still going to be divided. We're still going to live with confusions. Now we've got other things. I don't want to deal with that one. Oh my gosh, there's a whole nother issue. Maybe I can let that go. And instead of going on to the happy place, we're allowing other parts of us take over. And that's where the signifying of covering the son's offspring, covering the old man back up, and the old man not being happy about it. This is us realizing we've got to move on and resolve something else. Okay, let's stop for a minute and take a look at what that looks like here on the self-healing template. And what we see down here is to prepare for the journey. Number 4, that happened as they got packed and ready to go. The struggle to leave the past, I'm not certain. Crossing the threshold, that was, I guess, coming across from flood to the other. Defeating evil, render it inert. So what happened on our path is we're moving along, that we flooded out the world, and we now still have the world. However, it is no longer, it is now inert. The old raucous stuff is gone. The evil is defeated. We return healed. That's where he came back and was feeling good, naked in the tent and uncovered. He was healed. After a short time, the next issues arise. That's where his sons covered him up and said, yeah, we got more stuff that we have to deal with as well. Okay, and remembering to continue to transition these when we tell the story like this, that the son is saying we have more issues as well. What I mean is that there is a part of us that is moving on as we feel good about life, that we realize we still have more issues in the past, that, we've got more to take care of. However, we don't right away, and time goes by. Let's take a look at it on my little chart. Okay, what we have here in review again is the very top row is the human life cycle sequence. It goes from the first creation myth and the second creation myth all the way down to where the world is raucous and God decides it's time to wash it out. The second row is the monomyth, and the third row is where the Tower of Babel is. And the first 2 blocks up there in the left is the 2 creation myths, and they would appear on my list right here as the first 7. As we continue down through number 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, I'm going to stop right there, and that's going to appear here on the sequence, or in the template from the Bible itself. Then we've got our time goes by down here, and finally we have become so internally frazzled we decide we've had enough right there. Okay, honestly, I don't feel incredibly confident with what I've laid out here so far, but I feel like we have to get started in it. Let's move right into the Tower of Babel and just start looking at some pieces that are going to line up in that story once we interpret them in the same way, how they're going to fit on this template, or the templates that we have in place right now. Okay, the Tower of Babel. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words, and as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar, and settled there. And they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which mortals had built. And the Lord said, Look, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. The Lord, but there's an analogous term here that really means that there's our higher being, but our connection to the cosmos and the cosmos. God produces whatever is good, whatever is bad. God is all. If something is produced that is bad, someone might say, well, it's from Satan, but Satan is from God. Ultimately, God is this background, whatever it is being produced. So God is not always a good thing, and we have to dismiss ourselves from that idea. That's why God is sometimes a good guy, sometimes a bad guy. Because people think it's real. They're analogous, and we need to look at them more carefully than that. So in this case, what is being represented is, first of all, there is no city, and everybody's of one speech. That's like us as children, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. We are very combined. We're very together. Adam and Eve are happy. They're naked, unashamed in the garden. Here we are all together, all of our aspects, all of our qualities together. We are unified as infants. All right, remember back in Genesis when when the idea was that we left the Garden of Eden, we were sent to the east. Now what happens here? The people come from the east. So here we're seeing elements of combinations of patterns beginning to emerge that are difficult to see unless we do something different. We don't have them memorized like they did. But if you look at these, you go, there's a lot of fun things in here. As life goes on, we create the structure that is who and what we are. We create the Tower of Babel through our life experiences. And as we're doing so, we're trying to achieve whatever life is out there. But what happens? It goes bad. We get scattered. This represents the idea that now at the end of this, when we're scattered and the tower is destroyed, that's like the bad earth. So what we've done is gone from a place of purity, of togetherness, then trying to create the structure that is who and what we are. Remember earlier we're talking about the fields, it could be your territory, your building, your city, your whatever it is, your vineyard, the things that you're creating, your kingdom, all of those, your tower. In this case, the tower, my structure, who and what I am is being created throughout my life. And at the end, it's scattered. And here I am at the end. So what we're seeing is it's following that same pattern sequence. Let's pull it up real quick and look. Okay, what we have here is step number 7. That's where we're going to start. 7, 3, pure, unjudged life, carefree. At the Tower of Babel, we were all one speech, all together, all unified. Everybody was okay. 7 was it. What did we have then is that we began building a tower. We began to attach to the physical. There was not a division in there, but we did become attached to the physical. We began making the tower and the bricks and all of that to put it together. And then we further increase what we become. Fruitful and multiply. Yep. Time goes by. I didn't really see that in there. We have become so internally frazzled, we decide we've had enough. What we actually have is God has, instead of the people went bad and God wants to destroy it, this time God destroyed it and made it bad. So we're just coming down on either side of whoever's telling this story. And God is analogous. God is not a creature. God does have a purpose, though, and it's incredibly important for us to understand what they mean when they say God. We have to operate with God, but God's a mental place we can get to. Okay, so that's how that worked right there. At the same time, something is happening here in those analogs. They're creating a religion. They're creating, this is our group against them. We're separating from the Babylonians. The Babylonians have ziggurats. They have these, the remains of these towers are there. People can look through the culture and say, oh, these must be true. I see the remains of that. People today go, oh, there's so much archaeological evidence. The Bible has to be true. They wrote the stories then. Yeah. The crumbling bricks, ziggurats. The ziggurats were there. Jericho crumbled. Yeah. Jericho was already crumbled, just claiming that something happened in the area, so we're going to put it into our story. Later, that doesn't make the story true. That's what many people think from the historical standpoint. But they're creating a religion, and it's staying on this template. So we went, the step there from pure to scattered to, all the way through to the end. And then what do we have? A lineage. Time goes by. This is us. We've gone through a purification process. We start out unified. Time goes by. We still try to have life, and it still goes bad. It still divides. And then, I think it's just full of Easter eggs, all of the doubling up of names. And right there, what we saw is that in the beginning of that story, the people from the east, knowing that where did the sinners get sent? From the Garden of Eden to the east. So here we have a way of getting back to 7 without using the number 7 from the east. We'll add that into number 7 up there as another way to get back to that point. From the east. There we go. Another way to get back to number 7. Perfect. There's going to be a lot of analogs there. Now, the way I analyze this story is I look at other stories that are very descriptive. This one is very non-descriptive, how short it is. This one is absolutely not really intended to be a monomyth. It is more, in my opinion, trying to create the illusion of the religion with the ziggurats there, the crumbled remains, the knowledge of the Babylonians in the past, and their emergence from the Babylonians. That's where Genesis gets its flood story from, certainly. However, what I see happening is that even though there are short bits like this is not it's not a monomyth. It's showing a human sequence, but just a few steps along the way. Let's take a closer look at them, though, because I say they appear in sequence. Let's look at that real quick. When we see the Tower of Babel, the first thing that happens there, everybody is one speech from the east. We can correlate to the spot on the previous template, or the template that we are currently establishing as being that pure spot to begin with. Then what happens? We make bricks. That is where we get attached to the physical. That would be equivalent to first sin. We're beginning to experience the world. We are beginning to build our structure, our Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel is who and what we are. It's going to represent the structure of our existence, of our belief and our experience in life and the way we feel about and judge and experience life. The third thing that happens there is that we continue to build that structure. That fits right into we're still attaching to the physical. We build it all the way to the clouds. becoming fruitful and multiply. That tower, we work together and just keep building and building and building it. Oh, time goes by, doesn't it? There's the sequence. And then at the end, I've changed this on the list. We have become so internally frazzled, we decide we've had enough. That's actually two things happening. We have become so internally frazzled. That's step 14. I'll change that to step 15. We decide we've had enough. That's a different step. Some people become internally frazzled, and that's it right there. All the people scattered again, that represents all of the characteristics that we have, that we're scattered. We are in conflict with ourselves. Think of that. We want to do things. We don't do what we want to. We do things that we don't want to do. All of these are ideas representing that all of the people inside of us, all of the characteristics that we're holding, can live in conflict. Anyway, that's the sequence right there that emerges. You see that is the pattern that I'm talking about. And that is going to continue in it may not use every step, but every step that it does use is going to be in the proper sequence. And we'll just adjust it and improve it as we go. And again, in the earliest work, it is not highly refined. Right here where we're working is very old, and it's more refined in later works. There's that sequence that happens that way, that pattern that I'm going to suggest is going to remain in place. I've gone on long enough in this video and need to bring it to an end, but if you were to go right ahead in the Abram and Sarai story that I'm going to start next, it sets up the story, it sets up conditions, and then it begins, and it starts out with the two of them, which is each of us individually, in the land of Canaan, which is the good place to be, with the famine, which means that we are fasting as to the world. That was a good place. That's a 7-day right there. So that's another place that when we get to, we're going to start seeing what's really there, how it really interprets once we realize it's metaphoric. Well, anyway, okay, that's it for this video. It's gone on long enough. I hope it made sense. If I've gotten anything messed up, or if I'm not clear somewhere, please ask me questions. Please help guide me on this. And the pattern's there, the template's there, the sequence of events is there. If anyone can't see them, you cannot see them. They are there. Okay, that's it for this video. Love one another, and I'll see you in the next one.